Hi, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to react on the steel and aluminum tariffs and the decision by the White House yesterday night. You've heard the Prime Minister. These tariffs are completely unacceptable. They're unjustified, they're unlawful, and we'll make sure that we fight against them. Meanwhile, I've been in close contact with lots of CEOs, at least 10 of them, from the steel and aluminum sectors yesterday night and this morning, and also with major labor organizations from Unifor to steelworkers or la FTQ. We know that people are anxious, and we know that lots of communities are impacted by these tariffs. That's why what we're doing right now is we'll continue to fight against them. We'll make sure also that we continue to negotiate with the Americans a security and trade partnership. The Prime Minister had alluded to that earlier today, and at the same time, Dominic LeBlanc, the Minister of the U.S.-Canada Trade, was in Washington yesterday. And finally, we know that meanwhile what we need to do here in Canada is we need to build. We need to create jobs in the country. We need to make sure that ultimately we create a very strong domestic market and we create jobs. And that's what we'll do. We'll make sure to do that through major projects, major infrastructure projects, and we will do that also investing in our defense sector, creating jobs here at home that, of course, will have an impact on the steel and aluminum workers. I will be taking your questions, but before, allow me to say this in French. So, there's lots of noise here in Parliament, lots of action. OK. On recommence. Donc, il va de soi que les tarifs qui ont été annoncés par la Maison-Blanche hier sont complètement inacceptables. Ils sont injustifiés et ils sont illégaux. Alors, nous allons continuer à nous battre pour faire en sorte de les faire enlever. Et entre-temps, ce que l'on fait, c'est que j'ai eu plusieurs conversations avec plusieurs PDG, que ce soit des PDG dans le domaine de l'acier et de l'aluminium, au moins une dizaine depuis hier. Et également, j'ai eu plusieurs conversations avec le mouvement syndical. Donc, j'ai parlé avec Unifor, avec aussi les métallos et également la FTQ. Nous allons continuer à nous battre contre ces tarifs-là et en même temps, nous allons continuer de négocier. Et c'est pourquoi, le Premier ministre l'a mentionné un petit peu plus tôt aujourd'hui, il y a des négociations en cours pour un partenariat en matière de commerce et en matière de défense avec les États-Unis. Et le ministre du Commerce entre le Canada et les États-Unis était à Washington hier. Notre objectif, et pendant qu'on continue de faire en sorte de se battre contre ces tarifs-là, de négocier, on doit créer des jobs au Canada. On doit créer une demande pour l'acier et l'aluminium chez nous. C'est fondamental et c'est pourquoi on doit bâtir. C'est pour ça qu'on doit avoir de grands projets d'infrastructures nationaux. C'est pour ça que le premier ministre était à Saskatoon avec les premiers ministres, le premier ministre Legault et tous les autres premiers ministres. Donc, si on est capable d'avoir plusieurs grands projets, on va être capable de créer des emplois dans le secteur de l'acier et l'aluminium nécessairement, mais aussi on va créer des emplois dans le domaine de la défense parce que c'est fondamental qu'on puisse au même moment investir dans notre sécurité, notre souveraineté, qu'on puisse créer des jobs chez nous.
What about the idea of? And by the way, it was Minister Champagne making all that noise.
You said it. I didn't say it. I recognize the voice.
The concept of dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs. At one point in the campaign, the leader, Mark Carney, was talking about that. Why not dollar-for-dollar tariffs today?
So I don't know if it was you or somebody else asked him already the question. It is an important question. We have had really strong counter tariffs against the Americans already. With China and now newly Mexico, we've imposed important counter tariffs. We will make sure that we impose maximum pain to the U.S. while having minimum pain, minimum impact to Canadians. We are looking at different scenarios right now. And we will take a decision, but we need a bit more time right now, not too long. But of course, what is fundamental is we need to make sure that in everything we do, we're able to get to the best deal with the Americans, but at the same time that we're able to create and protect jobs here in the country.
Steel producers say that fast-tracking infrastructure projects is a medium-term fix, not a short-term one, and we need something done immediately. They suggested
that's a very good question.
Hiking tariffs on China as a result and other unfair traders.
No, that's a very good question. Why? Because that's exactly what lots of CEOs have said, because obviously lots of companies will have to decide what they do in their coming weeks. Tomorrow is Steel Day on the Hill. I will be meeting with the heads of many steel organizations here in the country. Yesterday, the Prime Minister and I had a meeting with the global CEO of ArcelorMittal, who's owns the ArcelorMittal Dofasco steel in Hamilton, and also the Contrecoeur plant in Quebec. These were exactly the conversations. How can we make sure that we protect jobs? How we make sure that we protect investments? And how can we be in solution mode at the government level? So I'm willing to have these conversations with these decision makers, because we need to make sure to be there as a government to ultimately protect the jobs.
Pour les contre-tarifs, pourquoi ne pas projeter de la force? Pourquoi attendre?
Bien, parce qu'on a déjà plusieurs contre-tarifs. C'est déjà le cas. On en a plus que la majorité du monde entier. Et notre objectif est de continuer de mettre la pression, mais en même temps, on est dans une position où on veut s'assurer de ne pas trop affecter les gens ici au Canada. Donc, on essaie d'être très, très stratégique, mais on n'a pas enlevé de la table ce scénario d'en mettre davantage. On veut juste continuer présentement ces négociations-là pour ultimement être capable d'arriver à ce qui est nécessaire, c'est-à-dire protéger notre économie, protéger notre monde, puis ultimement être capable d'investir dans notre économie et créer des jobs chez nous.
Are you concerned that Premier Ford is undermining the Prime Minister right now? He was on American TV saying that he's demanded retaliatory tariffs to the Prime Minister. He's talking to reporters saying that the Prime Minister is being steamrolled by Trump.
So if my colleague Dominique Leblanc was answering you this question, he would say we're all in Team Canada. And of course, that's what we'll do. But the other thing is it's fundamental that we fight against these tariffs. We've said it from day one, and we'll continue to do so. This was also an important question during the elections. Canadians gave us the mandate to negotiate with the Americans, but at the same time to make sure that we would build the strongest economy of the G7, and that's exactly what we'll do.
Can you see some of the revenues from the tariffs?
When?
Yeah. Okay.
When?
Thank you so much, guys. The boss. Yeah. Have a good one.
A bit more about, you were talking earlier today about having a meeting. Is that with the steel industry? Is that going to be with that all caucus group, the steel caucus?
There's a lot of things going on right now, a lot of meetings, a lot of dialogue, which is really critically important. I facilitated a meeting between the Canadian Steel Producers Association and Minister Joly for tomorrow. There's similarities in the steel industry, but there are unique differences, and obviously they're all having issues with liquidity because of the tariffs that were at 25% that have now been announced to 50%. So this is an opportunity to have that dialogue on how we can support that industry.
What about this all-party group? We've heard Conservative leader Paul-Hus says he wants to see a strong response. Is there any sort of discussions amongst the different parties about how Canada should respond here?
Yeah, we're going to be facilitating reconstituting the all-party steel caucus. I've been co-chair since 2016, and we'll be having that meeting hopefully next week.
And you're the MP for Sault Ste. Marie, Algoma. Obviously very impacted by these tariffs. Have you spoken with your community, or what kind of impact do you expect this extra 25% to have?
Yeah, it's a constant dialogue. So when Trump had announced doubling from the 25 to the 50, I had already been working with the unions, with the steel companies on supporting them, fight, protect, and build. So that dialogue was continuing, but as he announced it, I was on my phone right away calling Minister Joly and a number of other people, including the Prime Minister's office, and facilitated some dialogues between the minister and various leaders in the steel industry and the unions, and that work continues. So tomorrow we're having more meetings. Myself, I'll be meeting with Tenaris and Algoma Steel in my community to further discuss how we can support the workers in the industry.
Do you think Canada should be responding with more counter tariffs?
You know, I think all options are on the table, and the Prime Minister is very capable and a great negotiator. He just facilitated a very important meeting between the premiers because that's also part of what we need to do is we need to make sure that we're not as reliant on the American market, and that is by doing business with each other. That's a $200 billion opportunity, and there'll be a lot of steel and aluminum used in these projects. As well, it makes us more attractive to other countries to invest, such as Japan. I'm co-chair of Canada-Japan. The Japanese are looking at ways to diversify away from the United States as well. So that's what we have to do. We have to have immediate plans of action, then medium and long term, because we're dealing with this president not just today, but for the next 3 years. Thank you. Thank you. I just said this one thing about one thing about losing your job in Northern Ontario, where it's different from other large cities, is if you lose a job, say in Hamilton, you go through the same experiences of suffering a loss, and it's a terrible experience. However, people can drive 20 minutes and get another job. If you lose your job in Northern Ontario, you know the next big, and if you lose the industry, the next drive is like 4 hours away. Thank you. And you lose your liquidity in your house, like you saw in Elliott Lake. When the uranium mines closed, people just didn't lose their jobs. They lost their livelihood. They lost their homes. So that's what kind of burns in my heart. So thank you.
Oui. Est-ce qu'il y a une fixation des Québécois envers les pipelines en ce moment, alors qu'il y a beaucoup de projets de s'entendre? Une fixation? Oui, on parle beaucoup de pipelines. Vous en parlez en chambre, vous en parlez à nos éléments. Est-ce qu'il y a une fixation sur les pipelines? Bien, je pense qu'il y a une fixation de la part de M. Carney sur les pipelines actuellement. Pas de la part des Québécois. Les Québécois, dans le fond, ils regardent M. Carney et ils disent « Ah, peut-être qu'il y a un projet, mais il n'y a pas de projet, il n'y a pas de promoteur, il n'y a pas de marché actuellement pour la plupart du temps. » Donc c'est une lancée à l'avant par M. Carney qui est en train de dérouler le tapis rouge pour les pétrolières, essentiellement. Comment il fait ça? Selon vous, quand vous regardez M. Carney en ce moment, qu'est-ce qu'il fait, M. Carney, qui déroule le tapis rouge? Bien, écoutez, il a clairement convoqué une rencontre avec les premiers ministres de toutes les provinces. Avant cette rencontre-là, il a rencontré une vingtaine de PDG des pétrolières. Il a clairement indiqué, puis il y a un document du gouvernement qui démontre qu'il veut accélérer les évaluations environnementales, qu'il veut essentiellement changer la façon d'approuver, affaiblir ces évaluations-là pour approuver des projets de pipeline plus rapidement. Pourquoi au Québec, ça serait une mauvaise idée en 2025 d'avoir un pipeline qui passe au Québec? Bien, parce que c'était une mauvaise idée il y a 10 ans. On l'avait, un projet NRJS. Il a été rejeté pour plusieurs raisons. Parce que ça nuisait à la transition écologique, parce qu'il n'y avait pas d'acceptabilité sociale, ça menaçait l'eau potable. Et là, 10 ans plus tard, avec la crise des changements climatiques, les feux de forêt, c'est encore plus une mauvaise idée que d'aller de l'avant avec les pipelines. Le projet de loi sur les grands projets, qu'est-ce que vous voulez voir ou pas voir là-dedans? Bien, pour nous, c'est clair qu'on ne veut pas voir d'affaiblissement des évaluations environnementales et c'est clairement ce vers quoi s'en va le gouvernement. On veut voir aussi une évaluation sérieuse des changements climatiques dans ce qui va être l'identification de ce qui est un projet national. L'idée d'aller de l'avant avec des pipelines, clairement, selon nous, ça ne pourrait jamais passer la barre d'une sélection pour des projets nationaux, parce que c'est un des critères de faire la décarbonation selon M. Carney, mais on pense qu'il va vouloir aller de l'avant et mettre de côté les changements climatiques comme il fait depuis le début de la campagne électorale et comme il a continué à le faire post-campagne. Mais Mme Smith a semblé comme casser un peu l'idée de passer un pipeline au Québec, de s'en aller vers la baie du Son. Qu'est-ce que vous faites de ça? Est-ce que ça va? Que ça soit vraiment dans le discours. Non, ça reste extrêmement inquiétant que M. Carney, comme solution face à M. Trump, propose de se lancer davantage dans le pétrole et dans le gaz. Clairement, un projet de pipeline au Québec, il n'y en a pas actuellement. Il n'y a pas de promoteur et c'est probablement le dernier endroit où ils veulent passer au Canada. Mais sur la côte ouest, la Colombie-Britannique a dit non, on n'en veut pas essentiellement. Les autres projets vers le nord, selon nous, c'est clairement des projets qui risquent de ne pas lever parce que ça va coûter beaucoup plus cher, c'est beaucoup plus difficile à réaliser. Mais pour nous, c'est inquiétant parce que le gouvernement se concentre actuellement sur l'idée de développer davantage le pétrole et le gaz, de mettre des pipelines, alors qu'il devrait se concentrer à faire la transition énergétique. Et c'est ça la priorité. Mais clairement, c'est pas la priorité du gouvernement. Est-ce
qu'il y a une voie de passage, un compromis, quelque chose qui pourrait être là-dedans, qui vous satisfait, puis vous dites, OK, on appuie rapidement ce projet-là pour une adoption avant l'été?
Bien, pour nous, évidemment, s'il y a éventuellement un projet de loi, il va falloir le regarder. Et là, on n'a que des mots. Oui, il y a un document du gouvernement, mais pour l'instant, on ne peut pas se prononcer sur ce qu'on n'a pas vu. Les intentions nous inquiètent au plus haut point et ça démontre que M. Carney est en train de mettre de côté la lutte contre les changements climatiques alors que l'Ouest est en train de brûler, encore une fois.
Merci beaucoup. Merci à vous.
On peut parler de pipelines. Des pipelines au Québec? Oui, non, peut-être. Sinon, sur
Mais les pipelines, là, vous savez qu'on n'est pas les pipelines. Mais à partir de là, est-ce que le Québec est d'accord? Est-ce qu'il y a un projet? Premièrement, c'est après un projet, c'est pas le gouvernement qui va le faire.
Est-ce qu'il faut militer pour ça, selon vous, au Québec?
Ben, il n'y a pas une question de militer, c'est une question de s'il y a des besoins, puis s'il y a de l'industrie qui a un besoin puis qui veulent en faire, là, c'est de voir à permettre, avoir la possibilité de le faire pour arrêter notre dépendance envers les Américains.
Mais le Bloc, a vraiment...
No. I just said,
Minister, just for a quick
things
second.
move quickly in a tariff world. No, I said, but tariff move quickly, things move quickly in a tariff world. You know, our mission is to fight these tariffs. That's why you had Minister LeBlanc yesterday, which was there. Then we're going to make sure we protect our worker and industry, and we're going to build Canada with Canadian steel, aluminum. So that's our mission, and that's what we're doing.
Does that mean more countermeasures?
Listen, for now, it's fighting. You know, that's what we said. And like I said, Mr. LeBlanc was just in Washington, and things move quickly in the tariff world.
Well, what is fighting? Is that countermeasures?
Well, fighting, we're pretty good at. You've seen us in action, and you'll see us again. You know, we're going to fight, and then we're going to protect in the meantime, make sure we build.
So what timelines are we talking about here?
Well, listen, we keep fighting. I'll see you tomorrow. You have me for 4 years. No, I'm not going anywhere, so.
I know I heard you on this just a few days ago, but tell us, why is a national firefighting service important?
We've been working on this now for years because it's been very clear that due to the climate crisis, we're going to face more fire events and they're going to be more extreme. We need to be better prepared. It happens, I will disclose, that I have a personal interest because within my community of Saanich Gulf Islands is the holder of the de Havilland patents, and they produce the de Havilland Canada Air 515, which is one of the best water bombers in the world. It can scoop up water out of lakes. It's partly produced in Saanich Gulf Islands and partly in Calgary. It has back orders right now for airplanes that are all headed for Europe because the European Union decided to work collectively as, 24 different nation states and decide to buy the best water bombers as a group, and then they will deploy them fast. So if there's a forest fire, there have been devastating fires, as you know, in Spain. There have been devastating fires in Greece. They deploy shared resources to where the situation is most extreme. In Canada, a national firefighting force. Our firefighters are so valiant and brave, and there's volunteer firefighters from my riding who go up into the firefighting zones where you need people the most and fast. But we could do much more with advanced training and preparation. From the point of view of the Green Party, one of the other things we need to do is look ahead at where you have isolated, particularly First Nations communities, and build fire breaks ahead of time so that you remove the dead and diseased trees that are fuel and plant deciduous trees which are cooler and more moist and help create a fire break. But a national firefighting force with shared training and regimes and sharing with local people and engaging First Nations so that the people are on the ground and ready to go right across the country. Because as you'll recall, 2 years ago in May 2023, there wasn't a single Prince Edward Island didn't have wildfires, but in the month of May of 2023, every single province had wildfires. There were evacuations in Halifax, and that's never happened before. So we need to cooperate. We need a national firefighting force, and we need the equipment, and we need water bombers.
The government hasn't responded to us today on the topic, but you've been pushing for it for years. What have you heard from the government as to why this hasn't moved forward?
Well, there's been obviously changes in ministers and changes in government. I hope it will move forward. I know, and I shouldn't speak on behalf of him, maybe he'd give you an interview, but I know that when Bill Blair, who was Minister of Emergency Preparedness for a while, during that month of May of 2023, he held regular briefing sessions for all of the opposition party leaders. We were all kept up to date on what was going on. And then as Minister of Defense, started thinking, well, you know, and so I shouldn't relate private conversations, you should ask him, but Greens also think if we're going to be able to equip our military properly, we're having a lot of trouble with recruitment. If you give young people an opportunity to experience the training and the value, the respect, and the deep gratitude of people for that work, Greens in our platform in 2025 called for a civil defense corps, which would engage young people at good salaries to do things in relation to climate preparedness and climate response. But that could be an entry-level position that engaged people to think about, well, maybe this is a career. Maybe I do want to go into the military. They're different streams, but they have in common defending your communities. And that's what I think we need to do, and we need to have a national focus and not, I mean, at this point, provinces don't own water bombers. They often rent them one to the other. Water bombers won't put out most of the, once a fire's out of control, but you could stop it early if you could, because the nature of 21st century fire is very different from 20th century fire because of the climate crisis. It's changed fire behavior. It's made fires much harder to put out and much more dangerous for communities.
So you haven't found the government to be against this idea, it just hasn't moved forward with it?
I think, I mean, if it was really wanting to move forward with it, it would have been in a budget. So we haven't seen a commitment to it from any federal government, but I can't say I've ever run into resistance to the idea. Another one of my former colleagues in this place, Kennedy Stewart, who was an NDP member of Parliament from South Okanagan, West Kootenay, was very much in the forefront of this, and we worked together on it, that we need to have a national firefighting force. Every time we brought it up in Parliament, we sensed widespread support for the idea. So I don't think it's resistance as much as other things keep pressing and seeming more important until you're in a firefighting crisis, and then everyone says, why don't we have a national firefighting force? Why don't we have a water bomber fleet? The ability to think ahead and realize this isn't a momentary crisis. This is going to keep getting worse, and we are not showing any signs that we're better prepared in 2025 than we were in 2023.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. It's not my time, it's a rant, and I appreciate your indulgence. All of you are now my small therapy group. I owe you money as a counselor. I appreciate it enormously.